1, 2, 3, 4. It's time to rock and load. So this is going to be the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum show. Got a lot of interesting airplanes. Going to do a little bit of Second Amendment news and stuff really quick first. Been watching this movie, Peppermint. Got the DVD, Blu-ray version, and it's basically John Wick with a female lead. So if you like characters that are just want revenge for lots of bad, I guess a bunch of bad guys, it's Peppermint. It's like I said, it's just John Wick with a female lead. All right. Second Amendment news. Let's see. Oklahoma can't make it tonight. He's working late or something. Let's see. The GOA filed filed for an injunction against and an appeal against the Trump bump stock ban, and the government had asked for a postponement of the court case due to the government shutdown. But the problem was that the regular people that owned bump stocks had 90 days to turn them in, and they wanted that would have put if they postponed the case on the bump stock, that would mean everyone would, by the time the case was heard, everybody that didn't turn in their bump stocks would already be felons, technically, according to that law. So the court denied the government's request for a postponement of the case. So that was a minor victory by the GOA. Let's see. What else? I'm trying to keep track of all the cases. There were so many. Let me look at my notes here on my cheat notes, which is on the. Oh yeah, I've been on Dianne Feinstein's bill. The FPC did a video making fun. For all you Star Wars nerds who remember when the Emperor says execute order number 66 to the Imperial Clones Army, then so Congress. I went on Congress.gov and they still have not loaded the text of the actual assault weapons ban. There's been a lot of people talking about it, but whether or not they just don't have anybody working to enter the text into the computer. I mean, it says on the website that they never got it yet, but that doesn't mean that may not be it. It's not loaded on the Congress.gov site where it's supposed to be loaded. So, but we can all assume that it pretty much will suck because it's Dianne Feinstein. It's the same bill she introduces every year, except it's worse every year. So on this, in the video description of this podcast, there's links to all my favorite 2A legal fighting organizations like Second Amendment Foundation, FPC, Gun Owners of America. Now, I don't know why the NRA was like, are they like backing Rubio's red flag law, federal red flag law? Because that just sounds like it.
From what I heard, yeah, they are.
Makes me feel sorry. I still have a few years left on the membership, but I'd rather donate to the other organizations that are fighting all that shit. But
hey, don't worry, man. I wrote a letter to Chris Cox. I'll get this fixed.
Why don't you write one to Oliver North?
I thought about it. I thought, Marine to Marine, but instead I should just meet him at the. Well, he'd be at the officers club. I'd be at the enlisted club. Yeah, I guess I'd better write him a letter.
Well, you could challenge him to a duel. Because why don't you just settle it by challenging him to duel in like that mud pit? What was that?
Bugle sticks? You want me to do bugle sticks with Colonel North?
Yeah.
He might still have some fight left in him.
Well, I still got some fight left in me too, but how bad do you want freedom, man?
All right, I'll do it.
Heartbreak Ridge.
Yeah, that's where he fights the commanding officer. Yeah, he bites the colonel.
Yeah, that was just a fist fight, man. I'm talking about bugle sticks. You do bayonet training, you know, with. Well, whatever. All right, yeah, it don't matter. A fight's a fight. Bring it on.
Right. That's what I want to hear. Okay, so now that we've solved that problem with the NRA, Squib's going to challenge Colonel North into a fight in the mud pit, whatever that is called. I mean, it was matchup. I think they said it was a matchup. But anyway, so I can't get the text yet. It's not loaded on the Congress.gov. I've seen a lot of videos about how bad Dianne Feinstein's bill sucks. And I believe it, but it'll be interesting to see when the text comes out. But anyway, if you want to do anything about it, there's a bunch of organizations like Florida Carry and a few others that are just listed in the video description, and I'm sure they'd all appreciate them. You could sign up for them for an inexpensive amount of money and give them a little bit of encouragement. Anyway, all right, on to the air show. I can click on all the right buttons. Let me see if I can manage to do that.
Yeah, it pretty much bans every firearm. Semi-auto.
The last thing I'll talk about was that the idiot with the Mossberg who was after some young, basically kidnapped, basically broke into a house, shot the father, shot the mother, and kidnapped like a 13-year-old girl or something, and held her for like a couple months before she escaped. And so he's looking at a couple life sentences, and it's too bad they don't have the death penalty in Wisconsin. That's it was a crying shame. But he's in jail where he belongs, and I don't think he's getting out anytime soon. His bail is $5 million cash, so I'm sure he doesn't have it. Anyway, so we'll start with this first picture. You guys can see it. It's B29. It's my dad standing underneath it. We're not sure. We think maybe this is at March March Air Force Base Museum, but I can't swear to it because he doesn't remember. His hobby is to visit lots of aerospace museums, so it could be at the Smithsonian, but Swift said that one was the Enola Gay that's at the Smithsonian, so this isn't the Enola Gay. Anyway, but that's my dad there, so you can get like just a perspective. He's about 5'8", I think, so he's like an inch shorter than me or something like that. Maybe he's 5'7", I don't know. So from the front, it doesn't look like it doesn't look tall, but I guess it depends what angle you're looking at. These were in service after World War II. I think they flew missions in Korea. And I know the French asked for help in aerial intervention when they were surrounded at Dien Bien Phu, and they didn't get any air support from these guys. But that's one thing France has always been pissed off at America about, but nothing good happened in Vietnam. Anyway, next picture. So we're going to get on to some other aircraft and pictures from the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum. If I could manage to click on all the right boxes, which remains to be seen. Still not clicking on the right boxes. All right. That these two planes here, the one on the left is a 0. There's kind of my dad in the middle, looking a little bit older than he was in the picture with the B29. And let me ID the one on the right. This is hangar 37. Or is it hangar 79? Let's see. Let me just. All right. So the Zero is Mitsubishi A6M2 Model 21 Type Zero. The reddish color plate, maybe it's orange, is Aeronca, Aeronca Model 65 TC. So it sounds Italian. Aeronca. You ever heard of that one? Aeronca Model 65.
I've never heard of that, but there were so many manufacturers people back then making airplanes back in the 30s.
It was there were 154 of those built. It was an observation plane, nicknamed the Defender. Let's see, the Aeronca TC65 Defender was an American high-wing light plane of the 1940s. Aeronautical Corporation of America formally changed its name to. Why they should have kept that name. That was better than Aeronca Aircraft Corporation until 1941, and the onset of World War II ushered in a new era for that company. The production of TC65 Defenders was increased for use by the U.S. government's civilian pilot training program, created to train new pilots for possible wartime service. 8 private aircraft were in the air over Oahu at the time of December 7th attack on Pearl Harbor. 4 were from the KT Flying Service, 2 from Gambo Flying Service, and 1 from Andrews Flying Service, and 1 from Huilele Flying Club. All right. Local attorney and territorial legislator Rob Vitusak and his teenage son were flying the Defender towards Pearl Harbor that Sunday morning. According to Martin, they stayed in the air during part of the attack, circling at 2,000 feet to avoid the Japanese planes. Upon taking fire from enemy aircraft, they immediately returned to John Rogers Field and executed a safe landing. John Rogers Field is now Honolulu International Airport. They were fortunate. Of the 8 pilots in the air that day, 3 were shot down, 2 of whom died. 1 was forced to bail out. 2 landed safely. 2 pilots went missing and are presumed dead. All right. There's a plane you've probably never seen before. And pretty much everybody knows the story of the Zero. Right. Now this one is, I think this is a Kate. So this is a restoration job that they dug up from, it was at the bottom of the ocean, I'm pretty sure. They've got it's the next one, nope, it's not. Let me zoom in on this one so you can see the most dangerous plane. No, this is a Kate, yeah. I don't have another picture on that, but this is what's left of a Kate. I think this was the Axis aircraft that sunk the most Allied ships in World War II.
And Kate was a torpedo bomber, not a dive bomber, right?
It was a well, it was their first. I'll have to let me click through to
the Val was the major dive bomber, and I thought the Kate was the torpedo bomber. I mean, they had other models. But.
I'm gonna have to plow through this because I know I have a card for that in here somewhere. I just need to get to it.
And you'll have to forgive me. I'm kind of muting up a lot of the work.
All right. Here it is again. Another picture. These were not in any good order, but the most dangerous plane, certainly the most effective torpedo bomber in the world in 1941, the Kate sank more Allied ships than any other Axis aircraft. The Japanese Imperial Navy spent the decades between the wars building up the world's greatest naval aviation power. At the center of operations was the Nakajima-built BSN Shiki Kanjo, this transliteration, Kogeki-ki, often abbreviated as Kanko, the Type 97 bomber. Nakajima's design was a great leap forward, replacing biplanes. Sleek, speedy, and streamlined, the B-5N was the first all-metal monocoque aircraft with retractable gear and flaps in the Imperial arsenal. Entering service in 1937 and almost immediately engaged combat in China. By 1941, the B-5N Congo racked up victory after victory. Even in the Japanese defeat at Midway, Cates mortally wounded the USS Yorktown. By late 1943, the loss of Corps of Trained Naval Aviators at Midway, creeping obsolescence, and the light defensive armament spelled the end of active combat for the Kate, replaced by the B-6N Chill. The remaining Kates soldiered on as land bombers, trainers, and kamikaze aircraft. All right, so although about 1,150 B-5Ns were built, this airframe is the most intact Kate remaining anywhere. It was still in combat in 1945, escorted by Royal New Zealand Air Force Corsairs. It was surrendered at Jacquinot Airfield in New Britain shortly. New Britain is also known as Rabaul. Shortly after the war ended, then pushed into the jungle and forgotten. All visible damage to the aircraft was later inflicted by souvenir hunters. Okay, souvenir hunters. And that's, so this one obviously had folding wings, but pushed it off into the jungle, and somebody found it and wound up at this museum. Cool. Now let me go back to where I was before I had to go searching for the card on that to answer questions. They have a little setup of the, if anybody's seen 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, the TAC by, let's see, wait, what's this card? Oh, this card is basically saying how they had predicted that Pearl Harbor would be attacked by torpedoes, and that there's like remote island, Niihau, and a private corporation decided to furrow the island, and so it couldn't be used as potentially as an airfield. And I think Niihau is like mostly just for native people now, and that live there, and they kind of speak their own dialect of Hawaiian. But anyway, airplane. So this is George Bush's biplane that he first flew. George Bush that recently passed away. So
I'm having trouble seeing these pictures. Is it screen sharing properly?
Sorry, it's not screen sharing property. My bad. Let's do it again.
We just moved, man.
Thanks for letting me know.
There we go.
Got it.
I had to keep going back and forth from my phone to put it away because of work.
Okay. Well, there's George Bush's biplane. Stearman. Get back to the history on that one. Boeing N2S3 Stearman trainer.
Yep. You'll still find Stearmans here and there from time to time. They're popular as collectible, but they're still, I mean, as far as effective for training or just having fun or taking people for flights for tourism or things like that.
Yeah, so this one's called the Bush Stearman because he flew it. The name of the president flew it. They're called Stearman Cadets. And let's see, Bush soloed on this aircraft December 15th, 1942, while he was training in Minneapolis, MN. Is that Michigan?
Minnesota.
Minnesota, okay. Minneapolis, Minnesota, right. Vikings, okay. I got you. His flight logbook reflects tail numbers and flight hours from each plane flown from training. Bush was commissioned ensign in June 1943, making him the youngest naval aviator at the time, 18 years old. His TBM was hit near Chichijima, requiring him to bail out. Bush flew 58 missions and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, 3 air medals, and the Presidential Unit Citation aboard the USS Jacinto.
So he did 57 missions,
58.
and on his 58, okay, 58 mission. On his last mission, he was shot down. His radio operator slash rear gunner was with him for all but that last mission. He was on sick call that day, so they put a substitute in that aircraft. When the aircraft was hit and he started going down, he was able to get out, but the centripetal force of the aircraft going down pinned the other 2 crewmen in the aircraft, and they physically could not get out. So he was the only survivor. Back in 1994, I met his radio operator, and he told me the story about how if he hadn't been to sick call that day, he would have been dead, and just kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's just, you know, the roll of the dice when you're in a war sometimes.
Now, the TBM was the one made by the Eastern Division of the General Motors Company. The TBF was the one made by Grumman Aircraft. They're both the same aircraft, just the designation is based on the manufacturer. So this veteran that I met, he was aircrew on a restored TBM, and I got to help him do a brake job on it, which is kind of neat. And I got to wash the aircraft, and they let me climb up there in the cockpit and ride brakes when we towed it over to the wash rack. And it's really something trying to push down on the same brake pedals that'll engage the dive brakes or the brakes for the wheels. And you've really got to, I'm 6 foot tall, I'm average height, and I really had to like sink down in the seat and push my legs forward. It was something else. But even though the aircraft, it's big and it's got a tricycle landing gear, so it's tilted back. When you're sitting up there, even though you're not 30 feet up, it looks like you're looking out of a 3rd-story window. So it's really kind of cool.
Moving on to the Cactus Air Force. I think this is a Grumman Wildcat F4 fighter, and I think you kind of see the tail of a E-25 there. Hit the next picture. These really aren't ordered in any intelligible fashion, and then all of a sudden, for no reason, we move on to, is that an F-16 sitting there? Right? Yeah, that looks like a Fighting Falcon.
Yeah, that's an F-16 to the right.
All right, let's keep moving. There's my dad standing in front of a P-40 Warhawk.
Right. Made by Curtiss Aircraft.
And it's got the little shark mouth of the Flying Tigers. You know, I was thinking in my own diplomatic way, if since we're trying to negotiate a trade deal with China, you know, maybe we could do what could we do that would be easy, that wouldn't cost us any money, that China wouldn't have a problem with, and like we should make a national day for, like, we can have a National Flying Tigers Day or something like that. And then because that was one of the, you know, there were a few things in history where China really appreciated what America did as a military. The Flying Tigers was one of them. And pretty much that and the raid over Tokyo by the Doolittle Raiders off of the Hornet were two like events that somehow, if you could commemorate those events specifically, you know, China would be into that. You know, they somehow, you know, and who wouldn't be that's into aircraft? Anyway, so I think the only the Flying Tigers had the shark teeth on it, right? Nobody else.
Right, because they were the AVG, the American Volunteer Group. They were not actually attached to the United States military. It wasn't until after we entered the war that we absorbed them back in. So they could put those markings on there because at the time they weren't allowing that sort of artwork on aircraft. once you get deployed overseas, though, you can get away with putting artwork on aircraft. When you get back to the States, you got to take it off. As far as I know, they put that on there to make the aircraft look scarier. Because in the beginning of the war, that's when Japanese had their best pilots, best trained pilots, and they had equipment that was better than ours initially.
Yeah, I believe this whole strategy with the P-40s was just if they saw a Japanese formation and they had altitude, and the P-40s had enough altitude, was just to go full speed, dive right down at them, and don't stop to try and dogfight or anything. Just shoot them on your way through, get away, and then do it again later. And but because it wasn't as maneuverable as the Zeros, but it had enough.
That is correct.
Right.
Wasn't it Chenault? He was the one that was in charge of the ADG, and he's the one who taught some of these tactics to try to overcome the weaknesses of our aircraft and not let them employ the strengths of theirs, which is kind of what they teach pilots anyhow. It's always use your strengths and don't allow your enemy to use theirs.
Yeah. That's good advice in any situation, not just fighting it with aircraft, but
that one looked like the underside of an F-86.
That right there could be. I don't know. I can't tell.
Yeah, that's the underside of an F-86 Sabre, made by North American Aviation.
So that was one of the opponents of the MiG 15 that we're going to see in a bit. There's the location. This is Pearl Harbor Aviation. The Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum is on Ford Island. There's another museum in around Pearl, but this is the one on Ford Island. Let's see. There's a Zero, and they have a dummy there. They don't want people climbing on it. At the time, this was the most maneuverable aircraft around.
Oh yeah, that sucker was lightweight, no armor, no self-filling fuel tank.
Yeah, they sacrificed the weight, by getting rid of the armor and that sort of thing, for speed, range. They also had cannons, like the Germans did, and we did not have a policy of having cannons on aircraft.
Yeah, that was a big advantage for German Messerschmitts when they went up against Spitfires, because if you hit, because basically your fighter is like a big flying gas tank, and if you hit a Spitfire, a big flying, is basically with just one cannon shot and hit the gas, it's going to explode into, and that's why there were so many burn. A lot of pilots went down with burns, even if they escaped the plane, they were just terribly burned. And so that was a big thing. The Spitfires, they only had machine guns, which you needed to get more hits. You couldn't just hit a Messerschmitt once with them in one machine gun halt. One bullet wasn't going to take down a German plane. Because the British didn't have cannons. But the Spitfire was a really good plane.
I think the Spitfires also had the bullet they used was the 303 for the gel crack, the cartridge, if I remember right. It was one of them. Probably had more than just that. It was a very light machine gun. It wasn't real heavy like 50 or anything like that.
Ooh, there's another Warhawk.
I thought the P4 had a cannon in it, in the nose.
The P40?
Yeah, because
you're thinking of the Cobra. The Air Cobra?
No.
I see. I'm looking at 3 machine guns on each wing. Is what I'm looking at, and then imagine.
Yeah, but there were also like 2 machine guns up in the nose, right behind the propeller, and then there was a third hole, really big hole. I don't know if that was an air intake or if that was a cannon.
Well, I think I got another picture of it coming around. Let me see. That's a Zero.
Go back to that Zero. No, not there. The other way.
I'm sorry, what?
Go back the other way. Go back 2.
1, 2.
Right there. Okay. I just wanted to see if that was the float plane version or not. It's not. Never mind. But there was a float plane version of the Zero as well.
I didn't know that. Anyway, okay, so there's a little card here talking about the Jimmy Doolittle raid. If anybody's seen 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, let's see. So there's basically this, what this particular display in the museum is they have like mannequins that are supposed to be U.S. sailors, and it's like the wheel struts are lashed down to I guess ammo boxes to when they're on the carrier. And so they're trying to recreate that with this. There's another view of the Warhawk from underneath. And there's a view of the from straight up on the E-25 Mitchell bomber. And you get into one of those things, drop a few bombs on Tokyo, and then try and make it to China. That was.
They had to empty out all the guns and everything to lighten them up because they got spotted early before they could take off. They had to light the load on that thing and give them extra gas. That needed.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the card in it because it says how many people died on that mission. I'm going to just read it just for that. Undamaged by Japanese defenses but low on fuel, one B-25 successfully diverted to Vladivostok, Russia, while 4 ditched near the Japanese-held Chinese coast. 11 were abandoned from the air further inland. 3 flyers were killed outright. 8 were captured by the Japanese, of which 3 were executed, and 1 died in captivity. In case anybody has never seen the movie The Purple Heart, there's a film about that. The remaining 64 raiders were helped to safety by the Chinese. For his role, Jimmy Doolittle was promoted to Brigadier General and received the Medal of Honor. The raiders each received the Distinguished Flying Cross. And, there was a Marine that got up on just Medal of Honor, too. I think it was Boeington. Obviously not on that raid, but he was a fighter pilot. But it's amazing they have Mitchell just sitting there in such good condition. Yeah, some of these are in flying condition still.
Yeah, we've got one here in Michigan that flies.
And there's the Wildcat. This is supposed to be representing the Cactus Air Force on Guadalcanal. That was a hell of a bout. The Cactus Air Force. Despite contracting malaria, Captain Joe Foss downed an amazing 26 Japanese aircraft in 51 days. Received the Medal of Honor. A lot of medals of honor were on given out on Guadalcanal. Named for a Marine aviator killed during the Battle of Midway, Henderson Field, codenamed Cactus, provided the nickname for its aviators. The airfield was frequently bombarded by ships or attacked from the air, inflicting casualties and damage to parked American aircraft. The U.S. Marine and Army units stopped successive fierce Japanese ground assaults to recapture the field. All combatants suffered greatly from Guadalcanal's tropical hell of jungle, mud, parasites, and disease. Well, beats dying cold in Siberia, I guess, but dying is dying. All right. Let's see. There's a close-up of the engine. Here's the card on the F4F3 Wildcat. U.S. Navy and the Marine Corps flew these. And eventually they came out with a Hellcat towards the end of the war that was the Hell Dive Bomber, Hell Diver. What was the SPD replacement? Hell Diver?
Dauntless dive bomber.
Yeah, but I thought the Hell Diver really wasn't very successful. The TBD was first, then the SPD, and it was H2C or whatever the hell it was.
So all right, let's just
the Wildcat was before the Hellcat.
Okay, let's just finish up the Wildcat. It's maximum speed 331 miles per hour, range 770 miles. Okay, here's interesting. There's Michigan made it into this one. This Wildcat was accepted into Navy on service April 13th, 1943. On June 21st, Ensign George Hand was attempting to complete his carrier training in this airfield aboard aircraft aboard the USS Sable on Lake Michigan. A mechanical failure on takeoff caused Hand to ditch in the icy water. He survived, but the fighter sank 220 feet to the lake bed. In December 1991, the Wildcat was recovered from the muddy bottom. It was in remarkable condition. The tank still contained gas and oil. One tire was inflated, and the pilot's oxygen bottle held 1,800 pounds of pressure. Except for the magnesium components, the engine was corrosion-free. After 4 years of work and powered by the original engine, it was made its first post-restoration flight in June 1995. The Wildcat is pointed exactly the same as it was in 1943, painted exactly the same as it was in 1943, and is one of only two flight-worthy examples of its type in the world. Unlike later versions, it does not have foldable wings. Right.
Okay, so the ship it was launched from and lost from was not originally a Navy ship. At the beginning of the war, they had a shortage of aircraft carriers, obviously. They needed to have a dedicated training aircraft carrier, but they couldn't pull one from the small fleet that we had. We had, what, 4 initially? So what they did was they took a ferry, a paddle wheel ferry that was going back and forth across Lake Michigan, and they made it up like an aircraft carrier. It was 1/3 the size of an aircraft carrier. And they taught these students how to take off and land on a smaller ship configured the same way on Lake Michigan, where if they went into the water, they're near shore. They had, Great Lakes Naval Training Center there in Chicago. And this was I think it was all wood ship, and it was a paddle wheel ship too. I mean, it's just not the thing you think you would convert into a carrier. And there were a lot of aircraft lost in Lake Michigan from that. They had a lot of accidents. They had it much harder to land on a smaller deck, and then with no experience at all or little experience, it made it even more difficult. And they weren't always using the best aircraft either. The ones that were repaired from battle damage but were not really suitable to go back into combat were put into service. So they were flying all kinds of aircraft on it. They may not even be flying an aircraft type or style that was the kind that they were going to go into. They might be flying a rickety old dive bomber when they're going to become a fighter pilot, or vice versa, or whatever it was. So they had it really difficult, but they got through it, and they trained a lot of pilots there on Lake Michigan off the Chicago coast.
Yeah, I just love the history of these planes. That's why they have them in museums. .1200 horsepower Pratt & Whitney. 86 radial. Not even sure what that means. Okay, there's the B-25 with see the turret on the top. Dual grounding turrets. And here's the SBD. I think this was the nickname for this was slow, but slow and deadly.
Yeah, the SBD Dauntless, slow but deadly. And the aircraft could take a lot of damage. It had fair range. It could carry a lot of payload. And if you knew what you were doing, you could maneuver it to save your life if you were under attack.
The top speed was only 250 miles an hour. So
I think a couple Dauntless pilots actually have some air-to-air kills on a couple Japanese planes.
It did have your roboting.
It had a pair. I think it had a pair of 50 cals in the wings, and then a 30 cal for the for the gunner in the back.
1,800-pound bomb load, two fixed 50 caliber forward firing machine guns in upper cowling, 1 or 2 flexible belt fed 30 caliber machine guns mounted in the rear cockpit.
Right.
All right. So obviously there's the Stearman again. Obviously, so this Dauntless was the hero for the Americans, the Battle of Midway. Knocked out 4 carriers in one battle. Changed the course of the war. And there is no doubt that they were extremely lucky.
That right there is a good shot of the dive brakes.
Is that what the red things are?
Yeah, those are the flaps or aileron, or maybe not an aileron, but a flap that was their dive brake, so it would allow air to pass through and they can control the airplane better in a dive.
Right. If you just popped them up like a spoiler on a modern jet airliner, it wasn't stable enough to control in a dive, especially with all that heavy ordnance on the aircraft. So by having holes through there, you allow some air to pass through, and you keep it from going out of control.
And they put those things in, from what I've read and seen, is a dang near vertical, straight down dive when they were diving on a ship. I mean, those guys were. It was a roller coaster ride for that plane, for anybody in that thing.
Yeah, imagine being in the back seat.
Oh God! 1 minute you're pinned backwards. The next minute your face is eating the gun.
and all your ammo belts are probably wanting to leave you and walk out all by themselves because. The G-forces that thing pulled. Those guys didn't have G-suits back then. I mean, that plane pulled a hell of a lot of G's coming out of those dives. So, yeah,
tough guys for those things.
All right, and there's the Bush Stearman again, cadet trainer. There's a picture of George Bush when he was 18 years old. Senior. Okay, there's another picture of the Wildcat and the Mitchell. And now we come to Squib's favorite.
My aircraft.
Got a Kiowa.
There's a frog and a shitter.
There's a Kiowa and a Sea Stallion. There's a bunch of different ones.
Okay, the 2 in the middle are the 2 that I worked on. The one on the left, that's called a frog, P-H-R-O-G. The next one, that's a Sea Stallion, but we call them shitters because it looks like a flying toilet.
Okay, if you say so. And the one on the right, is that a Kiowa? And then a Bell Huey? On
the far left, there is that's an SH-3 Sea King, and then on the far right, I can't. It's not. Can you enlarge it?
Yes, I can.
All right, scroll to the right. So it's a Sea King, a Sea Knight, a Sea Stallion, and that looks like an SH60. I don't think that's a UE. That doesn't look like a UE. I think that's an SH60, a Seahawk. It looks like.
Seahawk. Okay.
Yeah, or it could be.
Now there's a UE off to the right. There.
Oh yeah, there's a UE past that in green. Yeah, but that's an Army UE. Yep.
All right. I think I got one more helicopter thing. I'm looking for what it says. Oh no. There's a Kiowa Warrior, Bell HO 58D Kiowa Warrior, Seahawk, Sea King, Sea Stallion, Sikorsky Choctaw, Boeing Vertol C-46 Sea Knight. All right, I'm just looking at.
Yeah, the CH-46 Sea Knight. Nobody calls it a Sea Knight. It's called a Frog.
Okay, so a Frog is this? Nobody calls it.
That was the aircraft I was primarily on.
Why is it
that's
called
my favorite helicopter.
Why?
It's a workhorse. It used to be the workhorse of the Marine Corps. I mean, it might not look that elegant, but I'm telling you what, I never had a problem flying on them. Now, next to it, the Sea Stallion that's there, that's either an A or a D model. That's got 2 engines and a 6 or 7 blade rotor. The later models, the E and the K models, they went up 1 more blade and added a 3rd engine. So, still a very capable aircraft.
All right.
Now, why is it that? What's the difference between that and the Chinook? Because I mean, they look exactly the same on both.
They look the same, but the 46 is a little brother. 46 a medium lift. The Chinook's a heavy lift. Made in the same factory in Philadelphia, similar layout, the Pisecki layout, but the Chinooks have larger turbines that are externally mounted, and it's a bigger airframe. And Chinook's a heavy lift. It'll carry almost as much as a Super Stallion, as much as a shitter, almost. They have the counter-rotating blades, and you've got some advantages to that system. But the Chinook is still in service, whereas the Sea Knight is no longer in service.
Some aircrafts have extremely long service life, like the Stratofortress B-52s, for example. They've been around forever. Okay, so here's some attack helicopters, I think.
Yeah, now those are all Army birds. The one on the left is a Huey, the one in the middle is a Cobra, and the one on the far right is it's what they call a Kiowa, or it's a Jet Ranger, more or less. Now that Cobra model there is probably a Golf model, which it's going to have a minigun and a 40 millimeter grenade launcher instead of a 20 millimeter cannon. That's an older style. And then the UE, it's hard tell, and that could be a Hotel model, a Victor model. It's really hard, a Delta model. Those are all U.S. Army aircraft, though. Even though the Marine Corps has a UE and a Cobra, they don't operate these models.
I love it. Okay. All right, so a chopper with a minigun. Can't beat that. All right, let's see what the next picture is. Oh, there's a nice picture of the Warhawk again. Zoom in a little bit.
That's an air scoop on that one, but I think they had later. Maybe it was on later model of them, but I know on later models they had a machine gun in the nose. And it may have been a later model.
What's your dog barking at, dude?
He wants me to play with him.
He barks at you like that to get.
Oh yeah, he's a big Rottweiler Mastiff.
Play with me or I'll eat you.
Yeah. He's a big old baby.
All right.
He's just sitting on the floor, being all pouty now.
Right. Well, I think this is a nice picture, though. It's really sharp. All right.
Yeah. That one's got all the markings from for the Flying Tigers.
Yeah. It's got the Chinese thing on the bottom of the plane. Is a wing there. It's like. All right, next picture.
The Thud F-105 Thunder Chief. That's a old plane.
F-105D model served as primary U.S. bomber during the early years of the Vietnam War. First in, last out aircraft on deep incursions.
That thing could carry a nuclear missile. Had an internal bomb bay on that plane.
Right.
Didn't really turn very well.
There it is, close up.
It was not a very good dogfighter, but it had speed. I mean, that thing would. I've read and heard.
Did it have guns? Did it have gun? It looks like it has guns.
I think it has a gun. Yeah, I think it's got a couple cannons on it.
Something they originally forgot to put on a Phantom and said, "We don't need guns. We've got missiles." Which turned out to be
wrong on that one though. But I mean, the main thing their main tactic was haul ass. That plane would move, even though it's huge.
The MiG 17s did shoot some of these down.
Oh yeah. The SAMs, MiG 17s. Yeah, it was not a very maneuverable aircraft at all.
They did have a Wild Weasel version of this, the G version.
Yes.
And which were specifically designed to hunt SAM missile sites. So electronic counter warfare. And then the return of the dogfighter. Let's see, F16 Fighting Falcon. There you go. A lot of air forces still use this today. I mean, I know the Gen 5 fighters are the latest hot thing, but I mean, this was after the Israeli Air Force had a lot of these. They probably still have them after these replaced the Delta Wing Mirages basically, and I listened to some of the Israeli fighter pilots that had lots of kills talked about them. It's like there's the one guy, one of the fighter pilots who flew the strike mission on the Iraqi nuclear reactor was he flew it in an F-16, but he had all the kills that were on his airplane were actually were earned in a Mirage, a Delta Wing fighter. So, but he said that basically this is like flying the computer. You just want input into a computer, and the computer flies the plane pretty much in an F-16, as opposed to Mirage, where you could feel, it wasn't fly-by electronics inputs. It was you could feel the load on the wings and stuff like that. It's a pilot thing, Delta Wing versus F-16, but this has more capabilities, and it's like a computer.
Well, the F-16's airframe is actually unstable. It has to have the computer system and the fly-by-wire to keep it stable, like the F-117A. It's a naturally unstable airframe, but it'll. Whew, man, I've seen those guys at air shows do some crazy stuff with those things.
Yeah, it's just a different type of combat than it was with the Delta Wings. And flying.
Your Delta Wing style fighters like the Delta Dagger, the Mirage, and the Dart. They're pretty much an interceptor. The Delta Wing design isn't that great for flying in air combat, from what I've read. Even though, say, the Typhoon Eurofighter, it's a Delta Wing with canards up front, and I think that's what helps it be maneuverable. But a Delta Wing plane is high-speed interceptors.
Well, it depends if you're, the Israeli guy who had 20 kills or whatever in the Mirage, he loved it. He said he loved it. He said that flying a Mirage was like flying. you know, it was like flying an F-16 was like sitting in front of a laptop or something, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, believe me, they'll do what they need to do. It's just one style is better suited for a type of flying versus another style.
Yeah, well, things most of us will never know about because we don't fly jets or fighters anyway. So,
yeah, that's true.
And here's one of the still an undefeated aircraft, the F-15A Eagle.
Man, I was in Kansas City and I saw one of those guys. It was the first time I flew Blue Angels, and he barreled down the runway and he raised up the gear, and he was full afterburner, and he just put that sucker straight nose up, and he was gone. I mean, he was. I don't know if he broke the world's altitude record from a takeoff that day or not. I want to say he did, but he went just ballistic.
I didn't know the Blue Angels had F-15s ever.
No, they didn't. No. This guy was an Air Force F-15 pilot just demonstrating the plane. And the Blue Angels were the main show that day. This guy was just flying just in the show. And I mean, he went so high you couldn't see him anymore. And then he just nosed the sucker back over and pointed it straight down at the ground. I mean, he went so high you couldn't see him. I mean, it was out of sight.
Ballistic missile straight to space.
Yeah, I mean that shot down missiles with that plane in space.
Yeah, if for air superiority, so far this fighter has never been defeated. But I mean, the Gen 5 fighters are like the F-35 it's gotten to the point where they're the ones that can survive missions into heavily defended airspace now. So those are the ones that they would send, and all the simulations. I mean, the F-35 had its problems when its program started. It had like a list of problems, but they appear to have worked through them. And the thing about the F-35 is what they say now is that whenever they do red force simulation exercises, that when they send somebody out in an F-35, the pilots come back. If they send them out in something else, they don't.
We had an F-35 demonstration here last October, and I was a doubter of the program for the money it cost. And the thing that I saw that plane do was mind-boggling. It was like the first time I saw an F-22 fly. It just did things that defied gravity and physics. But what I was going to say about the F-15 is the Israelis actually had one that actually got shot up and pretty bad, so bad that it had the wing actually shot off the aircraft, and the pilot flew the aircraft back to his airbase and landed it. And they couldn't believe that the wing was missing. Boeing couldn't believe that the wing was missing and the plane landed successfully. They actually sent out a bunch of engineers to go, well, how did this happen? Why? And the reason why it actually could still fly was because the entire body is still shaped like a wing with the engine air intakes right there and everything. It's kind of one big giant wing in the body, but he had to have a whole lot of airspeed to keep that thing flying. But he had no right wing. The right wing was totally gone, missing off the plane. It's just amazing. And you can look that story up and find it. They even got pictures of it. It's just the right wing's totally missing. And the pilot flew it home. It's crazy.
Well, some people are just born to fly, I guess. Me, I'm a ground pounder. All right. Let's see. Next picture. The Aardvark, the F-111 tactical bomber. Well, this was what they bombed Libya with, I believe. They had to fly around Spain and Portugal because they didn't want to give them flyover position to bomb Gaddafi after the whole thing with Lockerbie. Anyway, Gaddafi's dead. But they have an F-111 there. And oh, here's the Grumman F14D Tomcat. For anybody who's seen Top Gun.
That's Maverick's plane. Maverick and Goose.
God damn it, Maverick.
Who's up there? Cougar and Merlin and Maverick and Goose. Great. Maverick and Goose.
Your body is writing checks that your mind can't cash or something like that.
No, son, your ego is writing checks your body can't cash.
It's interesting that you show the F-111, then you show the F-14, because the F-14 came from the F-111. The F-111 Bravo was a Navy model, and it ended up failing trials, but what they did was they took the swept wing and the engines off of it, and the AIM-9 side, or AIM-9 side, not the AIM-9 side, the AIM-54 Phoenix weapon system, and put it on the F-14, and there you go. So if it weren't for the F-111, we wouldn't have had an F-14.
Yeah, the F-111, it was being developed and started being, the development project for the F-111 was actually back in the 50s, the mid to late 50s. So.
Your ego is writing checks your body can't cash. Maybe that was it. All right.
Yeah. That's what I said.
So I think this is the back of the F-111. So the whole thing about the F-111 is the wing could either sweep back or go straight to the side for two different performance characteristics.
It's called a variable geometry wing.
But the main difference on the F-111 versus the F-14's wing was the F-111, you had to manually set it into a certain mode, versus the F-14 was constantly computer controlled and would adjust on its own. So the pilot on the F-111, depending on what he wanted to do, he had to set the wing with a lever in that position, and then it would move. That was a big difference on the two, also.
Well, the design, the mission parameters why they had the swept wing was because they had to fly into the target at very low altitude, and then after they dropped the bomb, they had to like go ballistic, go ballistic, gain a lot of altitude and gain a lot of speed and get the hell out. So they had why they had two different wing configurations.
Yeah, because there's no guns on that one either.
The F-111 has a gun. It's got a M61 Falcon 20mm cannon on it.
Oh, I thought it had no gun.
Now, I don't know if the SB-111 version of it has a gun or not. I can't remember, but the F-111 itself...
Well, let's see what it says here. Doesn't say if it has a gun or not. I don't think. I mean, if I zoom in, maybe...
Yeah, can I interrupt?
Oh, somebody else made it into the chat?
Yeah, I'm here. And
hi,
also,
Dusty. How you doing today?
Also, Edge would like a link, if you could send it to him.
Oh, I didn't send Edge a link? All right, sure. Let me send him a link really quick. I'm sorry about that. I'm getting over head cold, and it's my bad. Sorry, Edge. Let me get it.
Another interesting thing about the F-111 is they didn't have ejection seats in it. They ejected the entire cockpit, because if they were at high speed and tried to eject, they were concerned that killed the pilot and the WISO, which is the weapon system officer. They're sat side by side, so the entire cockpit would eject from the aircraft, enclosed with a chute and everything.
All right. Copy, paste, send it to Edge, and send. All right, it's on its way. Let me know if it works or not. Type in the external. I'll keep an eye on it. All right, let's see if I can get us back. Yeah, if I take my eye off the external, I miss all kinds of stuff. Let's see. So when they did the raid on Libya, that was 1986, detouring around Spain and France. Okay, yeah, here's some, I can kind of read this on, let's see what it says. First flight, 1967. Maximum weight, 100,000 pounds. Maximum airspeed, 1,650 miles an hour. 66,000 feet ceiling. Weapons, 31,500 pounds of bomb payload. It doesn't say anything about guns on this one, on the C. All right.
And it could also carry a nuclear bomb too.
And here is a plane you probably saw in Tora 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 masquerading as a Japanese plane. Because they had these, and they were a lot easier to come by than Zeros for the movie. and it's a similar airframe. So let's see. Do I have any more? There's another Warhawk.
You're talking about a T6 Texan.
Yeah, that's the Texan.
In Canada, they called them the Harvard.
Yeah, because I guess people were supposed to learn something there. And that's what they were for. And they used them in Tora Tora Tora, and they painted them as Japanese planes because it was a similar profile, I guess. Airframe.
Did they use those same planes in the Final Countdown?
I have no idea. You can do some research on that if you want. Let me punch up the.
I want to say I have the movie The Final Countdown, and it does have the director talking in it, and he did use a couple real zeros in the Final Countdown.
Those must have been hard to come by.
There's only one flying zero in the world at Chino. There's only one left in the world that flies.
Okay, then I guess we're Texans then. I watched it in like 10 years ago.
The thing about Tora 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 is all the explosions those were real explosives. Those weren't CGI flames explosions in Tora Tora Tora. And they use those. They take the old films, and when they make a new movie that they need Japanese planes for, they just grab the old films and put the planes into the computers, and then they do the rest with CGI.
Just remember, when you buy a Mitsubishi, you're buying a car that contributed to the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
Well, I think that the Japanese planes all had Firestone tires. I mean, because that's where they got their tires from before the war started.
I heard they had Yokohamas, but okay.
Well, there was a story about the one plane that was it the New Jersey? I think it was in New Jersey that a Japanese bomber took a Japanese kamikaze was taking a suicide run, and it got shot down right in front of by one of the gun turrets, anti-aircraft gun turrets, and it's like landing struts like it hit the top of the anti-aircraft gun turrets, and they looked at the tire, and it was a Firestone. So,
I always wondered about pilots when they have to do those like 10-hour missions and refuel and all that shit. How do they take a piss or take a dump?
Well, I mean, if you have to take a leak, they have urinal bottles. I mean, as someone who was in a hospital for a while, and it was a pain in the ass to get up out of bed, you just use a urinal bottle. So if that's all it is, take. I mean, I can imagine that if you know you have a mission at a certain time, then you try and take whatever laxatives or however much fiber you need to not have to take a dump in the middle. But if you gotta take a shit,
the food they give you makes you constipated, and there's a funnel with a hose on it that runs out the bottom of the aircraft that's between your legs and the cockpit. I'm not shitting.
Right. Well, urinal bottle would
if you really want to mess with the new guy, you get him drunk, and then you tell him he's got to speak into the funnel because it's a megaphone.
All right. Well, skipping all the hazing. Nice to see you.
Wait a minute. How does he unzip his pants?
It's a flight suit. The zipper goes from your shoulder all the way down to your crotch at an angle.
Yeah, I used to ski. When I was at Mammoth, I went skiing in a flight suit.
If I'm gonna fly like from New York to Iraq, I have to crack open a couple cold ones on the way there. So
see,
it's gotta get stinky inside
people think cargo helicopters are lame, but it was great because you just get up out of the seat, you hook your gun belt to there's a lanyard that runs back and forth the entire length of the aircraft. Just hook that up so you don't fall out. You go to the cargo ramp in the back, you just hang out the back, and you just do your business right out the back, and the slipstream just pulls it away. So, and plenty of room to bring all your luggage, food, souvenirs, a couch, whatever. So, cargo helicopters are the shit, man. I don't care what anybody tells you.
Just drop the deuce wherever you feel like it.
All right, now
that we got a hellhole that we can drop the winch down. Right there in the middle of the floor in the back there. So I suppose you could.
So here's another beautiful picture of the Warhawk from a side angle. Looks like they have 5 kill flags on there. Pilot has a pilot's name on it, Robert M. Prescott. And try and zoom in on the card. I don't know. Yeah. The Birth of the Flying Tigers, American Volunteer Group. It's got a card on it, but the text is too small to read on this picture. All right. There's our MiG-15.
I never understood how people that were so associated with like being farmers and basically petty people escalated to all this science that just blew people's minds away with rockets and airplanes.
Rockets? Well, rockets is easy to understand. I mean, they were fighting the Germans.
Yeah, like the way, I guess so. The way they were just on top of it all and getting ahead of the space race.
Well, the Germans had a lot of good scientists working for them, and they had the V-2 rocket, and the Russians had the Katyusha rockets, it was just warfare.
Have you ever seen that German airplane? I saw a documentary about it. It was made out of wood. It was like the first really supersonic jet airplane that they had. It was almost completely constructed out of wood.
Any 163 Comet?
I think so, something like that. They said if it would have actually gone in production when it should have, it would have maybe changed the face of history. Or the time,
it wasn't the Comet. Was the British one? That wasn't the name of the German one.
No, you're thinking of the Comet airliner that was much later. No, the Mi-163 Comet was a German interceptor that was rocket powered. It was made out of wood.
Right.
Had a 230-millimeter cannon, and I think they only got 8 or 9 kills for all the effort they put into the program. They sent one in a submarine to Japan. Japan copied it. Their version was slightly smaller, but it worked the same way. They call it the shushui, which means sword slash, and I don't think it was ever successfully used in combat by the Japanese.
The reason the Germans couldn't, it took them so long is because their ball bearing plants were destroyed by the Allied bombers at great cost in life of Allied air crews. They went after all the ball bearing plants, and the Germans knew they were coming, and they lost hundreds of flight crews.
It was a cool little man. It was a sleek looking plane. It was even sexy. Like that plane's butt fucking ugly. You're right there. But it really is. But that German plane, that wooden plane, was like really sleek looking. I was like, wow, it's pretty aero. It's aerodynamic and it looks cool as shit. It was really small. Well,
what's interesting about the Russian planes is that they didn't use this one, it used tubes, vacuum tubes. It didn't use solid state electronics, so it could survive an EMP. If there was an EMP, it wouldn't affect. It didn't have any solid state. It was vacuum tubes. So I thought that was amazing to have an airplane that's run all on vacuum tubes instead of like chips. That's just
my favorite plane, or two favorite planes. One, obviously the SR-71, immaculate plane. But the other one is an ugly plane, but I love it. Is the Warthog, the A-10.
Yeah, everybody likes that plane, especially
big ass cannon.
But I think that the actor who played Lieutenant Worf in Star Trek: The Next Generation, he bought one of these these MiG-15s, and but he wasn't. The insurance company wouldn't let him fly it until the series. He was finished shooting the series.
Well, there's a MiG that not a lot of people, pardon me, but a lot of privileged people can buy, and it's a jet that I don't know, costs almost like $1 million or something like that. But people buy, and it's a freaking pimp ass freaking jet, dude, that hauls fucking ass from like the late 70s or something like that for what it is. But I've seen I was bored watching videos, and this guy's like, yeah, if you're privileged enough, you can own this jet fighter plane from Russia, and it's pretty pimp, dude. It was like, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, maybe $1 million, I don't know, $2 million.
Yeah, so if collecting AK-47s isn't enough for you, you're all bored with that, hey, you can start in collecting MiGs. Buy MiGs. You got more money than Jesus, and you want to have a good time in a jet, have your own jet. Obviously, they won't sell you with the guns on it, but flying is flying. And it looks pretty to me. Maybe you think it's butt ugly, but I mean, it's just the amazing thing is it's run by vacuum tubes to me. And it's if you're a prepper, it's EMP proof. Okay, they aren't gonna. It's not like it doesn't have any chips that will be fried by an EMP. All right.
Well, neither does that Saber there below it, but
I don't know. I don't know if the Saber has solid state.
You try finding people that get rebiased tubes, man. As a guitar player, and everybody wanting tube amps, it's great. So you have to get a replacement tube, and then you have to rebias them too.
Well, I won't get into tube design for you, but obviously you overload certain aspects of the tube. But anyway, let's not get into the weeds here.
Or if you own a grain dryer that is still operated on vacuum tubes. But there's not many of us that can service them anymore either. So,
well, all you have to do is swap tubes to get an equivalent from a Russian. Russians still make vacuum tubes. You can get an equivalency. You just need the part number of the vacuum tube. You look it up in a parts book for equivalency, and you get the Russian equivalent. And I have I still have vacuum tube mic amps and limiters from my old studio sitting in storage.
Can you test the vacuum tube HBS?
My tech can, he lives in Woodland Hills. Yeah, he designed.
That is a knowledge that is gone. I can test a vacuum tube, but that is another knowledge that has passed.
Well, it used to. I remember when you could go to the local electronics store, and they would have, a little thing you could check your TV. You could take your tube out of your TV, check it in the little thing test thing that you could plug it into, and it would tell you if it made a circuit. But Steve, the tech in my old studio, Steve, he got it hooked up with John Hall, and he designed his own based on the I'm trying to remember what it was based on. It was based on a famous limiter that John Hall designed, and he built this vac rack that became very popular. But then he designed another one where it depends which elements you run the audio through the vacuum tube and how much you overload the circuit. But anyway, again, we're way in the weeds.
We have a maintenance man in our panel. Let's see if he knows how to test a vacuum tube.
Well, you're just testing for continuity, dude, right? You're testing.
It's not just that, but you have to also balance them by biasing them, using tools to do that, to get it the tube to where you want it. Because the tubes typically, it's like kind of like a spark plug. They come set a certain way, and then you have to kind of tune them in.
Yeah, one thing that he did, I think, on his last version of mixing decks was he ran the audio through the plate instead of the. I'm trying to. It's been a while since I did, got into this, but I can. If you look up Vac Rack, that's like that guy used to. He started out. He started working for me. When he started working for Trident, then I hired him to keep my mixing board working because we're getting way into the weeds off the jet fighters, dude. So let's get back to we finished. We're back at the start. There's my dad with the unknown B29 somewhere.
Interesting little fact on that F-86 Sabre. They had an actual radar-assisted gun sight, and on the very front of the tip of the nose of the airplane is a little black section, and that little black section is a little radar emitter, and it would actually help it would move the pipper on the HUD for the pilot in the F-86, and it helped out with a tremendous amount of air-to-air kills against the MiG-15.
Yeah,
that was a big advantage.
Right, because the F-86 had 6 50 cal machine guns, whereas the MiGs had cannon and machine guns, and we just still had a policy of not going to cannons as armament. It wasn't until like the next generation of fighters that they finally go, hey, why don't we do what everybody else has been doing? And I know, I'm the last one to say let's copy another country, but some stuff, if it works, yeah, you might want to.
Well,
Americanize it a little bit.
Just looking at the F-86, comparing it on the screen, if you can see it to the MiG, the first thing I noticed is that it seems like the F-86 has better. It can look like behind him more than the MiG can. I think the MiG needed. I think the MiG guys needed. They had some kind of periscope that they had to install so they could see what was behind them.
There's still a double canopy. You can.
They use mirrors. They actually use mirrors.
Mirrors and periscopes, yeah.
But the big thing is the reason why Russians put the cannons on the MiG-15s in the 70s was to shoot down American bombers. You needed that cannon to knock down a big B-52 or a B-29.
Yeah, in the start of Korea. In the start of Korea, they still had the B-29s, and then when the MiG showed up, they had to call in fighters quick and get the hell out of there because there's no way a prop bomber is going to stand up to
the
squadron
20, 30 millimeter cannon.
Well,
cannon fire.
Okay, yeah, the jet's moving fast, so they're really having a hard time training their guns to it. And the jet's got a cannon that'll reach out further than the bomber's 50 cals will when they're shooting back. But here's the thing. You know how you were talking about one of the Doolittle Raiders landed in Vladivostok, Russia?
Yeah.
So that was part of what they told the bomber pilots during the war is if you're damaged and you can't turn around and fly back to one of the islands, continue on. And one of the places that is safe to land is Vladivostok because Russia is our ally. So we had some B-29s damaged over Japan land in Vladivostok. Now, they returned the crews to America. They took them on the railroad and got them actually delivered them to Iran, but they interred the B-29s. Stalin said, copy it down to the nut and bolt, and they copied the B-29 exactly except for one thing. They didn't use 50 cals. They didn't use any 50 cals on it. It was armed in all the same places with guns, 20 millimeter cannons. The Tu-4 Bull was an exact copy of the B-29, except it had 20 millimeter cannon instead of 50 cal machine guns. And that's where they got a lot of the technology that helped them later develop the Bear bomber and things like that from those interred aircraft.
I thought the engines were different. watching those.
Check this out. I'm gonna put a link in here. This is a customer of mine that I used to support. He was when I was a computer tech, and his name's Major General John Farrington. Now this cat's resume, man, is stout. I remember I looked at this company desktop. I was like, for giggles, let me look. And I was like, whoa. I looked at his resume, and he's like the fucking Pacific Fleet Commander for I guess their whole force. This guy flew the SR-71, FB-11, FB-111, U-2, TR-1S, KC, EC, RC-135, B-52. And
wait,
he's really humble.
I'm trying to follow you because you're roboting pretty bad. But something about why would a fleet commander be flying jets? I don't know.
Well, at the end of his career, he was like
he would have to be Air Force to fly those.
Yeah, he's Air Force.
Major General John Farrington, 15th Air Force, March Air Force Base. He was
a funny guy, really funny guy. He's like, I remember telling him, hey, I looked at your resume. Oh, man, that's awesome. He's like, yeah, every now and then I look at it myself and remind myself what I did. And I was like, okay, good.
The general is a command pilot with more than 5,500 flying hours in B-52s, E-3s, KC-135s, FB-111s, SR-71s, U-2s, TR-1s, and a variety of helicopters. Defense Distinguished Service Medal, Legion of Merit with Oak Leaf Cluster, Bronze Star, Meritorious Service Medal, Air Medal, and Combat Readiness Medal. Has also been awarded the rating of pilot in the Yugoslavian Air Force. How did that happen? All right.
He got his pilot training in Laredo, Texas, all things. His basic pilot training.
Right. Well, he wasn't a fleet commander or anything, because.
Scroll down a little more, and
he's Air Force.
No, but he was a commander of the Pacific Fleet for the Air Force at one point. I don't know if it says it here. Like Alaska, he was in charge of the whole.
Well, when you say fleet,
it would be Pacific Command.
Pacific Command. Okay, my bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, fleet usually.
Fleet would imply that he was on a ship.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Some of those aircraft share airframe, like the KC-135 and the E-3 share the same airframe. The U-2 and the TR-1 share the same airframe. So transitioning should be pretty quick. But that's a lot of different aircraft to fly for somebody in their career. A lot of guys don't get to fly more than one or two kinds. That's pretty amazing in itself.
Hey guys, I found out what B29 that is. That has K4K written on the nose, underneath the nose. That is the B29 of Sentimental Journey, and it is located in. I'm trying to see where. Just a bunch of pictures of the plane. Looks like it's in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay, then I've seen it. It's at Pima.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bet you I got a picture of it. Just, I'm driving. I can't get to it.
Wait, what's at Pima?
So the aircraft. The bomber B-29 your dad's standing in front of it is named Sentimental Journey.
Okay, you think that's the one at Pima? He's been there.
One.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm looking at the other side of the airplane from another picture, and it's got K4K on it.
Okay.
And on the left side of the aircraft, it says Sentimental Journey is the name. And they even show the front of the plane, too.
Now, if I remember correctly, they've got a B-29 and a B-50. A B-50 is more or less just an updated B-29. What happened was they wanted to improve the B-29s and maintain the fleet. Congress didn't want to allocate them any money to do that. They were totally against keeping the B-29. So the Air Force just changed the name of it and sent the bill to Congress, and they go, oh, this must be a new bomber, and signed off on it. Nothing's changed with Congress, has it? Just sign off on it, don't even read it. And the B-50 is a B-29 with updated stuff, and it's got jets on the wingtips there to give it extra altitude and maneuver or and capability and blah 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 blah. They made a tanker version of it, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it is in Pima Air and Space Museum, 330th Bomb Group, K-40, Quaker City, Sentimental Journey, and I guess it was based out of Guam.
Well, mystery solved.
Yep, I told you. Figure it out. It doesn't say if it's in flying condition. No, I haven't read that far.
There's only 2 of them now. The Fifi was the only one, but I thought they got a second one airworthy, right? And I'm not talking about Keybird. Keybird burned.
Yeah, there's another one that got up. The BAF got up and running. Actually, about 7 months ago.
I have a list on there's a list on Wikipedia of the surviving B-29 Super Fortresses.
And you might want to check on the A6M0. The only one I'm aware of that's in flying condition is the one that's at Chino in California. However, I haven't seen that aircraft in about 25 years. Somebody might have restored another one since then, but I doubt it.
Well, I showed you the picture of it.
That's not flying. That's not airworthy, though.
I don't know if it is or not.
There's A6Ms that are static display, but as far as one that can actually fly.
I want to say the Confederate Air Force or the Commemorative Air Force has a couple, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, but are they T6s that are repainted though?
They have a lot though that are, but I think they got a couple of them that are real zero that fly. But I am looking at the B-50, and it's got actually a jet engine on the wing and a big old fuel tank or some other weird thing on the wing too. Blister.
Okay, so
all they did to keep the B-29s in the fleet were to update them a little bit and change the designation, and Congress signed off on it.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed, man. Nothing's changed.
Let me get back to the zero.
Oh, this one, the one we shot, the B-50, they got their squibs a refueling tanker. Huh.
The B-50s were originally bombers, but because they had the B-36s and the B-52s and the B-58s and the B-57s and all these aircraft that were up and coming, they went ahead and they converted them to tankers because they had that range, that endurance, and they had that payload capacity. And they've got all these airplanes, and they got that are trained how to fly them, and they got all these ground crews that are trained to service them. They've got an inventory of parts. The the C-97 cargo plane used the same wing, the same engines, the same tail. They ended up converting that into a tanker as well. I mean, when you got that capacity, you might as well.
Well, I'm just looking at the zero. It looks in great shape, but obviously I can't see inside the engine cowling. So maybe just who knows what's inside there. Maybe just a bunch of spaghetti and wiring. But it looks like it's in good shape, but maybe it's not flyable. I don't know. It's right. So this museum is on Ford Island. There's another museum there too, another aviation, the Pacific Aviation Museum, I think also, but this is the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum on Ford Island, and they have the air tower there that sent out the famous warning, air raid Pearl Harbor. This is not a drill. And that had a pretty dramatic impact on history. So I hope everybody has had fun going over all these airplanes. I'm just going to show a picture of me and my dad at the end on the Big Island. And here we go. Where is he? There we are. There's me and my pop in Pahoa, outside of Kaleo's in the parking lot restaurant. And they had they took a cruise for their, I think, 59th anniversary or something, whatever it is at this point. And all the pictures came from their port call to Honolulu, and they had a port call in Hilo, and I drove over to the other side of the island to hook up with them, and we had a good time. Hadn't seen them in a year or so, so it was fun. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll probably have a little bit of an after chat. We've got a lot of Second Amendment organizations. If you're into fighting for our Second Amendment rights, all the ones that have legal are filing the legal cases currently against the some of the up and coming Democrat legislation from Feinstein and Pelosi and the bump stock ban. So check them out. They're in the video description. Second Amendment Foundation, Florida Carry, Firearm Policy Coalition, Gun Owners of America. Lots of good groups out there. And so, hey, step right up and join the fight. It's not just the guys on YouTube who it takes a country of free people to preserve freedom. All right, so see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in. Give us a thumbs up. God bless America.